Welcome back to Anxious Faith. My name's James Burke. As we've been talking this month, September is Suicide Awareness Month or Suicide Prevention Month in various parts of the world. And one of the things we're wanting to do at Anxious Faith is to share stories of people that, through their mental health challenges, have or haven't gotten to that point where they've been dealing with suicidal ideation or suicide attempts. It's something that is so rarely talked about in churches, even in life. But so many people actually get to that point. And this is not something we want to do to try and kind of glorify suicide in any way. But we want to open up the conversation so that people that might be dealing with these kind of questions actually realize, hey, this is not just me. I'm not the only one who's feeling this. Other people have gone through this and have come out the other side. Okay, this is not the end of everything for me. So this episode, we're excited to talk to Joshua. Joshua's a young, mid-20s guy in New Zealand. Has an amazing story. Like we said, this is Suicide Awareness Month, so we are going to be talking about suicide today. Not in any specific details or anything like that, but the whole topic is going to be revolving around that. So please, just if you need to exercise some caution in listening to that, please do that. But Joshua, it's great to have you with us. Why don't you just give us the very quick 30-second overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, cool. So my name's Joshua. I was born in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and I've grown up here all my life. I came to faith, which we'll dive into, but came to faith when I was a bit younger, and have just been just living life. I guess that's me.
Yeah. So you've had a journey, like you say, we'll jump into your faith journey as well, but you've also had a journey with mental health and mental illness in your life. You happy to tell us a bit about that and kind of how that journey started?
Yeah, for sure. When I was a teenager, did have some struggles with mental health. I had many a time where I would feel sad. I would, be a bit down, and I just, thought that was quite normal for a teenager who was, developing and changing and growing and, going through all of what teenagers go through.
They feel all the feelings of age, right?
Absolutely. And then it started to happen more often, and for prolonged periods of time, to the point where I would wake up and already be down about things that haven't even happened yet, or that I knew were going to happen, or that had happened already, and I just couldn't shake it. And it kept growing and growing. It was like a little ball inside that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where it kind of overtook my life. And by the time I hit 16, I was pretty much full-blown depressed. There's not really anything else I can really, say about that. But it got to the point of suicidal ideation. And planning and preparing to not be here anymore.
Which is pretty horrendous when you think about it, kind of thing. That's gone from something that started off small but has just continued to grow and grow. If you're happy to kind of go into a bit of detail about what life was like kind of in that downhill trajectory of the depression, like how did it actually affect you in a day-to-day life?
Right. So I was struggling at the time, due to just heaps of things that were going on in my life. I had feelings where I couldn't shake people not liking me. My parents had been divorced for a long time, but it was kind of finally getting to the point where I realized that not every family was like mine, and all of my friends' parents were still together, and I'd go over their houses and they'd have happy families and everything like that, and I'd come home and it'd be me, my mum, and my brother, and then I'd see my dad every couple of weekends, and from that everything kind of rolled into one. I was feeling less than other people, because of families, because of friendships, because of the way they looked, the way they acted, how everyone liked them, how not as many people liked me. And yeah, so it just kind of like it all started with a big whole lot of different little things, and they just all meshed together and created this big depressive ball of teenager.
Yeah, which is just a really hard thing to deal with, especially when like kind of you say you thought it was just normal, just teenager emotions kind of thing going through it. How did you try to reach out for help? Did you try and manage it in any way?
Yeah, so I would always talk to my friends or my youth leaders or people in the church um, about I was feeling sad, uh, and kind of not really diving into the reasons, just saying like, oh, I'm pretty sad at the moment. Don't really feel like doing that. Don't really feel like being around there. Um, and it got to the point where I was kind of withholding it from a lot of people.
Yeah, okay.
And when it was getting bigger, I was keeping it more inside, and I started
Mm,
separating myself um, from those people and from youth and from God, and I would
mm,
um, I would pull myself back, and it would be me, and it would be me fighting against what I was fighting against, and so yeah, it became a very individual sort of feeling.
yeah, is that because people didn't get what you were going through? You didn't feel comfortable to open up to them, or
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of that, and also I'd grown up not having a faith. I came to faith when I was
mm,
13, um, and so for the entirety of my pre-faith, I hadn't really had a bad experience. I hadn't really felt
mm,
down or felt worse or felt bad about anything. And so I guess I kind of took that as it must be this Christian thing. It must be this God thing. And
yeah,
um, so I'd pull myself away, and then those people that I was talking to, I was like, oh, well, you're part of the God thing as well,
mm,
and I associate you with my Christian, my faith, and so I will pull away from you as well. So it was a mixture of them not
mm,
understanding, or me thinking they wouldn't understand what I was going through, um, and also the fact that they were mixed in with faith.
yeah, which just makes it even more tricky. So yeah, let's just backtrack a little bit. So you want to tell us your story about how you actually came to faith when you were 13?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I grew up as a non-Christian. No one in my family is Christian, and there are only a couple of times in my life before I came to faith that I'd experienced anything to do with Jesus. And the
Okay.
first one was I was 5 years old, and we were learning at school about Easter, and I remember running home from the bus, running up the driveway and going, "Mum, Mum, Jesus died on a hot cross bun," not knowing anything. Um, so that was kind of my only real experience with faith before high school. And in high school, I on the first day we were given a seating plan in our little tutor form class, um, and I sat next to this guy, and he initially, from what I've learned afterwards, he didn't really enjoy hanging out with me. So maybe my feelings were valid. um, no, so he didn't really enjoy hanging out with me at the time, and he invited me along to his youth group, um, in the hopes that
You'd make some other friends and not have to hang out with him.
yeah, and that God would maybe change me and make me
Yeah.
into a more likable person for him. And so I had this went along to this youth group, kind of met all these people, started to be a bit more excited about having something to do on a Friday night, and learning more about who God was, and what church was. And then towards the end of that year, I ended up accepting God's love into my life, and making that decision, and kind of choosing it as this is who I am now, this is me. Um, And from there, I, kept developing in my faith. I would
Mm.
go to camps in the holidays, where I'd, lead children,
Mm.
talk to children about Jesus, and then in turn developing my own faith with that. Um,
Mm.
and that was kind of, the beginnings of my faith, in my early teenager years, when I was 15 or 16. I think 16, I joined a leadership course, um, and ended up going on a ministry exchange, and meeting once a month with these people to,
Oh, wow.
talk about who Jesus was, and kind of develop my faith um, through my teenager years.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you kind of alluded to it before about how you hadn't really experienced any of this depression before you'd come to faith, and then you accepted Jesus, accepted His sacrifice for you, kind of thing. Become a Christian, start, even not just going to youth group, but leading and teaching younger kids at camps and stuff like that. How long was it before kind of the depression started to kick in? Was it almost like an instant thing, or was it kind of all kind of happening over the space of a couple of years?
Yeah, I think around like 6 to 8 months after I became a Christian is when I started to notice my feelings of being a bit sad.
Mm.
And the snowball effect was a really long one. Like I didn't, like I
Mm.
was 14 at the time, noticing, oh, I'm just feeling a little bit down about these things, and oh, I'm still feeling down about it like a couple of days later. Um, but it was never all the time. It was quite like separate incidents, and then
Yeah.
by
Okay.
the time I kind of hit 15, they started to be prolonged,
Mm.
and more frequent, and more deep and dark.
Mm.
And then, yeah, by the time I hit 16 was when it got to the point where I was fully just enveloped in
Mm.
this depressive episode.
Mm.
And I'd kind of, yeah, found time in that 2.5 years to realize that, oh, this was God's doing, you know, this was,
Wow.
yeah. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is such a hard thing to wrestle with at any point in life, let alone as a teenager who is a relatively young Christian who doesn't have a Christian family around him, perhaps as well, to then go, yeah, hang on, this has all come about
Mm,
since God.
yeah.
And yeah, I can understand how you would then start to withdraw away from the people you're trying to talk to at church and youth and things like that, because you're like, hey, this has all happened since I gave my life to God,
Yeah.
and now this is happening. You say that kind of snowball effect was a kind of long and drawn out one. Do you know if people around you at youth, at school, or any of the leaders at church and things like that noticed that happening in you?
Yeah. I had a couple of good friends that I'd grown up with,
Mm.
that I would hang out every day with at school, and a couple of them, and it was very like isolated times, um, would, um, take the bus home with me,
Mm.
and kind of, they'd act as if they were, coming over to my house to have a great afternoon, and then as soon
Mm.
as we kind of got home or got off the bus, they would walk alongside me and kind of go, hey, what's going on? You know, just
Yeah.
really
Okay.
notice lately that you're
Yeah.
you're, you're quite down. Um, and yeah, so I think also I had youth leaders that would always check in, and then they
Mm.
would like check in, and so there was always that weekly like, oh my gosh, how you doing? And then there were a couple of times I got like pulled aside at youth, and it was out of the games,
Mm.
which really annoyed me because I was like
Ooh.
super
Yeah.
competitive. I was like, come on. And then so
This is not the time.
they're like, how are you doing? And I was like, well, now I'm worse, like. But so they'd pull me out and they'd talk to me, and it'd always end with all those emotions coming up and me kind of
Yeah.
um speaking out about, yeah, I'm not feeling great.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so it was. There were quite a few people who noticed. I found it quite easy to hide it from my mum,
Mm.
and hide it from my brother. I'd kind of hang out in my room, and not really. you know, um, come out and talk to them. And if they ask me anything specific, I'd just be like, nah, it's all good. Everything's fine. And because they weren't Christian, it was almost like they thought I had fully gone down this road and were almost shutting them out of it. And so it was like a double-edged sword kind of thing where I was going down this road, but also pulling myself away from that road. And then my family were like, oh, well, we're all on three completely different roads now, you know. And so yeah, my mum and my brother never really noticed, but those other people around me, you know, at school, at youth, they did notice, and it did get talked about a little bit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So even though they noticed and even though it was talked about, it clearly wasn't able to kind of stop that spiral or that downhill trend kind of thing.
Yeah, I would hold a lot back in those times. I'd just say, oh, you know, something happened this week and it was a bit, you know, a bit hard to deal with, and you know, they'd pray for that, and I'd be like, cool, sweet, that's all good. That's, you know, they didn't find out. Yes, you know, and yeah, it got to the point where I stopped showing up to youth for a few weeks at a time, and you know, I'd go to school and kind of hang out by myself at lunch and try and sit at the back of the class and not really interact, not really talk, and yeah, so I think that it developed further than anyone really realized. Obviously, anyone except for me, because I kind of knew, you know, how
You knew
bad
exactly what was going on.
how bad it was, and yeah, so they would ask and they would kind of get things out of me, but it was never the full story. I would always be really good at hiding it.
You give them kind of the little bit that makes it seem like you're being vulnerable and opening
Yeah.
up, but it wasn't the rest of the iceberg, so to speak, kind of thing. Yeah. It's then, yeah, you're saying how you began to kind of not show up to youth, you began to kind of, you know, distance yourself or withdraw into yourself kind of thing as things got worse. How did it go from that point to then feeling like you didn't want to be around him anymore?
Yeah, so it was around that time where I started to blame God, and kind of say to God, like, it's funny, I'd talk about how I didn't want to pray while talking to God. So I'd be like, God, I don't want to
Don't want
pray
to talk to you.
anymore. I don't want
Yeah.
to, you know, and you know, funnily enough, I am praying, um, and so there was a point where I fully was like, nah, I'm not Christian anymore. That's not me. Um, and these feelings kept coming up, and I had thought it was just residual from it. You know, it'd kind of been blown over from when I was a Christian, and it was still kind of going at me. And I ended up getting to the point where I had just had enough. School had gotten worse in terms of friendships and people I'd been around. I'd you know, had some things happening that were really great and then turned into being not so great. And it got to the point where I kind of was fed up. I was very, very fed up with living, fed up with how this faith in this God thing had ruined my life, and I decided that I would end my life. And it was funny. The happiness or the most happiness I'd felt in a really long time was choosing when I was going to die. I just had like this control. And so I was real happy, and I was like, cool, I'm going to do it in 2 weeks on this date, because then this thing will have happened, and my life will go out on a high. And yeah, I kind of was researching what's the easiest way to die. Had a full plan. Had my last day of school where I woke up in the morning and pretty much jumped out of bed, you know, super happy. I was like, oh my gosh, today's the day. I got dressed. I had a shower in the morning. Got dressed for school. Had breakfast for the first time in years. Um, said bye to my mum in the morning. Gave her a hug and a kiss, which was the first time in whoever knows how long.
Yeah.
Um, and walked down pretty much. Well, I say walked down, pretty much like jogged and skipped and laughed my way down to the bus. Got on the
Yeah.
bus, and that day was the day where I'd kind of decided to say goodbye, my goodbyes to all my friends. So I had, I knew I had a couple of class periods with these friends, and I was going to make the most of those and talk to them about that, and then the morning tea I'd spend with this friend group, and then lunch I'd spend with this friend group, and I'd kind of give them all hugs and
Yeah.
say goodbye, and then after school said goodbye to that friend that had invited me to youth. I said, hey bro, like, love ya. Um, I hope hope I see you again sometime. Which was,
Yeah.
he would have been like, huh? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? I'll see you tomorrow,
Yeah.
Gave him a big hug, and yeah, told him I loved him again, and then jumped on the bus, um, and that was the only part of that whole day where I'd felt a little bit of regret.
Yeah. Okay.
Was at that point. Every other point of the day, I was like, this is still the right decision. I'm still, excited. And after saying goodbye to him, was where I felt like a tiny little bit of regret.
Yeah.
That was,
Just to
yeah,
jump in for a sec. So that kind of that joy or that happiness you're saying, is that just coming from a place of this has been so hard for so long, I know it's going to be over soon?
yeah, it was a bit
Kind
of
of thing.
relief that I'd,
Yeah. Wow.
been able to get through it to this point, and I'd, made it through the 2 or so weeks that I'd, put out for myself, and I was so, yeah, just happy to have all this sadness and all this depression just end.
Yeah.
And so I jumped on the bus and kind of, ran from the bus up the driveway, and got home and wrote out my letter. Wrote out a nice page and a half letter, kind of detailing why,
Yeah. Wow.
saying goodbye and stuff to all these different people, um, and yeah, ending that letter, I kind of folded it up really nicely, put in an envelope on my bed. I was, had found this envelope, and I was like, cool, sweet, chuck it in there, write to whoever on the front really nicely, um, and then yeah, I was ready to go out and end my life.
That's yeah. That's like I can't imagine A, what it takes to get to that point, but B, then just that actually following through with all those steps and going, yeah, this is it, and yeah, this is I guess both, like we were saying before, like that happiness and that joy because the pain and the depression is over, kind of thing. Was there any kind of hesitation or thoughts about, oh, is this the right thing to do? You said you had that moment of hesitation when you said goodbye to your friend who invited you to youth,
Yeah,
but besides that, you were pretty set.
yeah, I had my ideal letter kind of already written out in my head,
Yeah, wow, yeah,
and in that letter, I had, um, like when I was writing the letter, I needed to add more. I felt the need to add
okay,
more, and I
yeah,
think that hesitation was like, oh, but I didn't say it good enough to this person who was my best friend and someone who I always had looked up to, and like I want to write something nice for him because I know how sad he'll be, because like I'm
yeah,
sad that he's going to be sad. um and so that was the first real point where I was like, oh yeah, that is hard to leave. He's hard to leave. um and yeah, I that was really the only point of hesitation, in
okay,
that whole
yeah.
process.
So then, yeah, like, you know, without going into details, you had your plan, you knew what you were going to do. Something happened because you're still
I
here.
am still here, yeah.
You are still here. Yeah, are you happy to talk us through kind of what happened next?
Yeah, so I put my litter out on my bed. I'd made my bed real nice, and I was um, going out to do it. And I heard this car coming up the driveway, and we have a long gravel driveway, so
Mm,
you can hear and you can see the gravel dust kind of
mm,
flying up. And I was really disappointed. I was like, oh man, who's here? Like who? Why? No one's meant to be here. Like my mum's meant to be working late. My brother's not staying here tonight. Um,
mm,
why would our neighbors come? And so I looked out the window and I saw my mum's car coming up the driveway, and I was like, oh, and got real frustrated because
mm,
I wasn't able to follow through with my plan. So I quickly, ran into my room, hid my letter underneath my pillow, and
mm.
um, acted like everything was normal.
Yeah.
Um, and she came inside, um, and like called out to me, and I was, doing what I normally do, just hanging out in my
Mm,
room. Um, and she called out and asked if I was home, and I was, yeah, mum, I'm here. And
mm,
she asked me to, come out to the kitchen. So I walked out to the kitchen, and she just goes, like, I don't know, I've just been feeling all day that, something had been nagging at me to come home and
mm.
spend time with you.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know where it was. I don't know what had been happening, but 3, 4 times today, I just felt the need to, okay, I need to go home and spend time with
Mm,
Josh. And um, yeah, I was still super disappointed and kind of, um,
yeah.
I was we had like a looking back now, we had like a mean as night, like we ordered in a pizza, and talked about heaps of stuff, and she wouldn't let me go into my room. She wanted to watch these things with me,
Mm,
and wanted to do stuff with me, and we went like for a little
yeah,
walk
wow.
and stuff like that. And it was yeah, it was in the moment really, really disappointing, but like looking back on it now, it was, one of the best things that had ever happened.
Yeah. She saved your life, basically.
Yeah, yeah, she did.
That's incredible. When did it begin to dawn on you that, or yeah, like you say, you were disappointed. So was there then a thought that, okay, well, now I have to reschedule everything? I'm still going to go ahead with this, or when did that begin to change?
Yeah, I think in that moment I kind of readjusted and had a look at what I was doing, and kind of like
Mm,
talked down to myself about wanting to do it.
mm.
And so it was a real quick, like almost like the snap of a finger, like change
Oh,
to
wow.
what am I doing?
Mm,
What like I can't believe I was about to do that.
oh, wow.
And it got to the point where um, I ripped up the letter,
Mm,
kind of was like, no, I can make it through this. I can do this. Like,
mm,
there's obviously something that wants me to be here
mm.
because my mum came home. My mum
Yeah,
wanted to spend time with me. There was something that made her come home. Um, so
yeah.
I don't know what it was out in the world that made me, at the time at least I didn't know what it was, that kept me alive. But
Mm.
I woke up the next morning and I was like super thankful.
What was the kind of road from there out kind of thing? You wake up the next day, you're thankful that it hasn't actually happened. Was that then a cool? This is done. This is over. I can kind of leave this behind, or was it not necessarily an immediate fix to everything?
No, so it wasn't an immediate fix, but it was almost a wake up call of maybe I do have to tell someone.
Mm,
Um, and so I ended up um, going back to youth and talking to one of my youth leaders, um,
mm,
and just explaining to him like, hey, I've been feeling this way. Um,
mm,
I you know have wanted to end my life for a little while now, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Um,
wow.
and I also told another one of my friends at school, um,
Mm.
who then straight away after me saying no, don't tell anyone, went and told like the dean or whatever, and they, I was in counselling
Yeah.
sessions like the day after. I was still frustrated at him, but
Yep.
I had yeah, I had to tell someone was my thing
Mm.
after that, and I was still feeling real sad. I'm still
Mm.
feeling real down, but that youth leader, he was pivotal in that
Mm.
he would come and hang out with me after school. Um,
Oh,
he
wow.
would take me out, and he'd buy me a frozen Coke from Macca's, and we would sit around and talk. He'd invite me over to his house.
Mm.
Would play Xbox for hours. And he just really sat with me and was with
Mm.
me in that. And um, he, yeah, was on the road of my recovery, and he was, right there, kind of pulling me along.
Mm.
And the more we hung out, and the more we kind of connected, um, even if it wasn't solely to do with that, if it was just like, oh, we're
Yeah.
actually just hanging out and
Yeah.
having a good time, it's still like it just made those made those feelings just subdue more and more,
Mm.
and just kind of dwindle down into normal feelings of sadness and
Oh, wow.
normal times, and those meetings with the counselor at school. I hadn't really ever openly like cried in front of people, um,
Yeah.
and pretty much as soon as I got in there, she was like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "It's Josh." And started crying and blubbering my way
Mm.
through what had been going on, and so that was like really helpful in that time. And I think
Mm.
from there, I had kind of noticed that it wasn't a me thing that had got me out of this, um,
Mm.
and it was something more than me. And I just
Yeah.
couldn't quite pick what it was, but I knew it wasn't
Mm.
more than me. Sorry, it wasn't just me. It was more than
Mm.
me. Um, and in that, I started coming back to faith. I joined
Mm.
that leadership course. I kept going to those camps. I went to youth group every week. Started leading at youth group, going to church every Sunday,
Yeah.
um, and slowly and surely was pulling my way out of there, and was um, leaning on God more than I'd ever leaned on God before.
Mm.
Um, and kind of in that couple of weeks after I had wanted to attempt but had failed, which is such a weird word to use, but um,
Yeah.
after a couple of weeks after that, just kind of praying again and saying, God, this is
Wow.
your chance. This is your chance to make things better. This is, I'm giving you a chance, which, yeah. Um, it's funny now because, it's such a
We love to make it all about us,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm in control of my life, God, and
Exactly. Yeah.
you're gonna help me. But yeah, so I started to lean on those Christians and started to lean on
Mm.
God, and um, really develop my faith with who God was.
Yeah, because to be at that place again after having thought for a couple of years that God or your faith is what had caused that depression, how did you begin to reconcile what you thought back then versus hey, now I'm leaning on God, I'm leaning on Christians, I'm praying again? Yeah, how did you kind of reconcile the two of those?
Yeah, I think it was there were two real like distinctive moments.
Mm.
One was I said a prayer like a couple of weeks after. It was part of that, this is your chance, God,
Mm.
where I just laid it all out, which is something
Mm.
I'd never done in prayer before, was just say everything that I was feeling. And I know, like, God
Mm.
obviously knows everything about us, and He knows us more intimately than anyone else. And um, I still think that opening up and explaining to God, like, hey, I'm really really struggling, was such a
Mm.
big pivotal thing, because it was like that
Mm.
breakthrough of I can tell God whatever. If I've told God that I wanted to kill myself, you know,
Mm.
I can tell God anything. God can be in anywhere.
Mm.
Um, and the other one was looking back at the hesitation,
Yeah.
um, and going, that's my Christian friend, and there was something that was stopping me because of my Christian friend. Um, and kind of, connecting, maybe God isn't the bad guy in the story. And yeah, so those were like the two real pivotal moments where I had, you know, oh yeah, it was all, I'll give God another chance. So, I'll lean
Yeah.
into this relationship with God, um, and then obviously, my youth, looking back and seeing my youth leader there, helping me and walking alongside me, and understanding that things get hard, but um, he was there and always praying for me and always, checking up on me.
Yeah, you kind of said about how it wasn't this instantaneous miraculous fix or anything. Like you still had those the depression for a long time, and it took a long time to actually kind of work your way out of that space. But it was kind of a what had been a gradual downhill was a gradual uphill
Mm,
kind of thing. But you were able to get to a place of being able to go, okay, well, this is just kind of back to normal
yeah.
levels of sadness and things that I'm dealing with. Um, what you know and you've leaned really heavily into your faith kind of in that almost immediate aftermath kind of thing. So what did you begin to learn a bit more about your faith, or even about God in that kind of that after time that you perhaps hadn't realized before?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learnt that, and as cheesy as this sounds, God is always walking alongside you. And it doesn't matter how far I pushed him away, and the depths I went to, no, God, you are not here. And your light is not a part of this, and who you are is not in this. This is because of you, and um, the the amount that I turned away, no matter how many times I turned away, God would still be there, and that was evident um, with my mum, and it took me a little while to kind of figure out, what had really gone on that day. Um,
Yeah.
it took me a long time to get from, oh yeah, mum was just like, oh, I just need to go home, to,
Yeah.
oh, that was God pulling, that was God like tugging at my mum, and for her being a non-Christian, and
Yeah.
um, it just being such a crazy thing, God, he came through and he spoke to me through the least Christian person I knew. And so
Yeah. Wow.
from there, it was kind of like that realization of, if God's willing to go to that length to get to me, like, why am I not leaning into him, and trying to get to him? And so I think the entire experience just taught me that, um, separating myself from who I am in God was almost like the beginning of the actual downfall.
Yeah.
Um, and every time that I do feel sad and do get down, it's that point of remembering that, you know I can't separate this from who I am in God. I can't separate my feelings and my struggles from my relationship with God, um, because the moment I do is the moment the downward spiral starts to begin, and it just gets worse and
Yeah.
worse.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's such a hard way to learn that
Yeah.
lesson, but an incredible lesson to have learned, and probably as a result of it being such a hard and full on way to learn it, is probably one that you hopefully won't forget.
Yeah, for sure.
um, you've kind of seen the immediate difference, or not the immediate, but you've seen the difference of what happened. So, well, how did you, if you're happy to talk about it, kind of thing, as you begin to slowly kind of work your way back up again emotionally, how did you begin to bring God into that?
Yeah. One thing I noticed is when I was sad, I was spending a lot of time alone.
Mm,
And those alone times were me, and me
mm,
only. And I think that when I was alone, and when I was isolated from, whether that, anyone or um, anything. When I was isolated, it was just me, and I
Mm.
realized that when it's just me, I start to get down again. I start to get sad. I
Mm.
start to, to drop down in happiness, and that even happens,
Mm.
nowadays. If I
Mm.
am isolated or I'm by myself, um, I have to remember that I'm not alone in those alone times, and
Mm.
that God is in those alone times with me. And so that process of realization of, okay, God is with me, but that's not enough. I need to invite Him into that space. And so
Yeah.
from that time, it was understanding that, okay, God is here, but I haven't invited Him here. He's just here. If I invite Him here,
Mm.
I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was that active invitation to then realize that, oh yeah, God is here with me now because I've invited Him here
Mm.
and we're both hanging out. Um, and so that invitation of God isn't just like, oh yeah, God, come on in.
Yeah.
It's I'll open the Bible, I'll pray,
Mm.
I'll listen to a podcast about God and about a story or um, something like that. And
Mm.
yeah, it was that process of uh, using that invitation to invite God in to be more than
Mm.
just hanging out, but actually diving into who God is and what my relationship with God is like, and strengthening that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing because, yeah, like you say, that's when it's just you and or it's just anyone by themselves kind of thing. That's when the thoughts can begin to spiral
Absolutely.
and just continue to go down. And yeah, but just going, well, hey, if I actively invite God into this, I'm not
Mm,
alone. Um, like you say, we so easily forget that He is actually
yeah.
walking beside us, kind of thing. We're the ones pushing Him away, as opposed to Him kind of leaving us or giving us distance, kind of thing. And but He's just waiting for that invitation to be welcomed back in.
Mm.
And so, what does that mean for you in reality in those kind of quiet, alone times? Then, like you said, yeah, sometimes you'll pray, sometimes you read your Bible, or listen to a podcast or something like that. But does it actually for you? Does it change kind of that whole kind of tone of that time when you're alone?
Yeah, I think it just made that difference in terms of it wasn't that I had to be, yeah, reading the Bible the whole time I was alone, because
Mm.
I can read, but I can't read that for that long. um,
Yeah.
and so I think that active invitation extending to God was almost like extending an invitation to a friend to come and hang out. And as
Mm.
much as like with my friends, I'll pray with them. Sometimes we'll
Mm.
talk about um, the Bible. Sometimes we'll read the Bible. Um, where this invitation to God isn't to only be focused on God, um,
Mm.
but it was to put the focus that it was us together,
Mm.
and that our like if I was reading the Bible and I ended up when I was coming home from school and being by myself for a few hours, I'd start my afternoon by reading the Bible, and diving into God's word. And I always look up on Google like, oh, um, I um, I got rejected today, or me and my girlfriend broke up. Bible verses, and and then I'd read that passage of the Bible or something like
Yeah.
that. And even through the times where life was really hard and I was really sad, um, it was inviting God in and reading the Bible and reading about my situation and knowing that it wasn't only me that had ever gone through something like
Mm.
this, and that God had
Mm.
been with millions of people that had done this before and that had
Mm.
been sad before, and
Mm.
um, just slowly coming to that realization that God was with me, and the emotions I was feeling were okay because I knew that
Mm.
God was in the room with me and He was with me,
Yeah.
and um, He was mending me.
I love one of the things when we talked before the interview. that you mentioned was about how, you'd even kind of make the decision to go, well, hey, it's not like this is just I have to do my quiet time once a day and that's me inviting God into it. But you could then, again, throughout the day, then go, hey, well, I'm going to re-invite you into this space, about this, not just going, okay, well, I've done my quiet time. I've spent my time with God for the day, but then later in the day going, hey, God, come back in.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's spend more time together.
And that's something I'm still learning as well, is how to invite God into those other times. Like I have a very set quiet time, time frame this in my week, and inviting God into those other times has always been a challenge, and has always been something that's really hard. And I think leaning back on when I was at my worst and inviting God in when I'd get off the bus or when I'd walk home, or when I got home and I was by myself. And I think knowing that if I could do it then, and if I could invite God in then I can invite God in when I'm going for a walk, or I can invite God in when I'm driving to work, when I'm on my lunch break at work, when I'm going to sleep. I'll invite God into that, and I think that that's one thing that has been really pivotal in the change, and not only the change but the consistency after that, and that it really ever is a struggle point anymore, because I can always turn to that, and I can always kind of understand that. Like there have been some times where it's been struggle street and looking like, oh gosh, I'm getting back to that space, but then it's that's right, I just need to invite God, and I haven't been inviting God, and I haven't been doing these quiet times, I haven't been consistent with my Bible reading, I haven't been doing that. And I think that's where I've gotten to in my stage of life now, is that and the consistency alongside the spontaneity has been really really cool.
Is there it's awesome how you would get home and Google the kind of Bible passages to read and things like that in when you're going through those things. But are there certain passages that kind of have seen you through those times, or stick with you through to this day as well?
There's been a few that I've kind of held on to in those times. The Bible verse that I hold on to all the time is Luke 18:27, and I think it might be NIV or ESV, where it's what is impossible through man is possible through God. And so every time that I was feeling that this was a massive monumental task, and I just couldn't be alone, I couldn't do that, it was that reminder of, actually, that is impossible for me to do by myself, but it will be possible with God around. And I also love Ecclesiastes 3, which talks about there's a season for everything. And so I always lean into that, and go through those whenever I'm feeling like I'm in the space where I'm not happy and I'm not content with life. And then there was countless times where I'd just be in a random part of Ephesians or Philippians or something, because I just searched it up online, and all of these different verses, they all are a part of my story now because of what they meant to me at the time. And so again, the specifics is harder to remember because there were so many of them, but those are the ones that I kind of lean on the most.
Well, that's it. It's in some ways you're kind of rebuilding a new foundation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that new foundation is based on His word and what He says and those promises that He has for us. That what does seem impossible for us and what is impossible for us as humans is possible for God, which is huge. When you start to put that into your own circumstance and what you're feeling in any one particular place, having that foundation then to draw upon does yeah, like when that is the foundation that you're kind of rebuilding things on, then it does really give you that base to go back to. So, you mentioned briefly about how sometimes you know, still kind of get into those places or start to see yourself heading down that road again in terms of that depression and things like that. How how does that look for you? And then also, how is it different now that you're kind of in this place of faith and knowing how to deal with it a bit better?
Yeah. The sadness is quite different now, to what it was then. I think back then, um, I was feeling very alone, and like everybody hated me, and um, like I was, nothing to anyone. Um,
Mm,
and I think the sadness that I experience now, and I still go through depressive episodes, not
mm,
nearly as bad as there's um, only ever been kind of one time since then where I've even had ideation on my mind.
yeah.
And I think that now it has kind of morphed into I'm not enough for my friends. They need more.
Okay.
Um,
Mm,
and it's more of a, instead of it being all about me, it's well, like it's still about me, but it's what
mm,
I'm not doing as opposed to what everyone else was doing to me. And
mm,
so it's shifted, and I think that now I'm at a point where like I don't really care if people don't like me. Um, I struggle with it for sure. Like if someone's
mm,
like, oh, this person doesn't like you, it's
mm,
no, and it's but it never gets to the point where I worry why they don't like me.
mm,
I am who I am, um, and if they don't like me, that's on them. That's not on me. Um, and now it's me, yeah, saying like, oh my gosh, I didn't come through enough for my friend, or oh, my
mm,
friend really needed that and I wasn't there, or I really let them down. And
mm,
so I get into these points where, yeah, I'm just so outwardly focused towards my friends now in terms of if I am sad, it's probably not because of me being like, oh, everyone hates me, but I'm not doing enough. And so I kind of beat
mm,
myself up over that. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so the depressive episodes are never as bad as it was back then. Um, but there have certainly been some since then.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and
And is how you deal with it differently, kind of having learnt what you've learnt and having the faith that you've got now?
yeah, for sure. I think almost immediately it's looking back at my last week and a half before that, in the lead up to how I'm feeling, and going,
Mm.
oh man, I really like kicked God out of my life. I really, like, I didn't have
Mm,
time to do that on Monday morning, or, I didn't
yeah.
have time to read my Bible or pray for people on Wednesday night, or, I didn't
Mm,
invite God in because I was too busy, or,
yep.
um, and then I kind of pushed God away, and then I get sad and I go, why am I sad?
Yeah.
And so it's all about that recognition of, oh man, it's because I haven't been with God, and it's because
Mm.
I haven't had God there, to um, yeah, just keep a hold of me in those times and make those times seem really small.
Um, yeah, I guess just to wrap it up, because we've actually been talking for an hour already, um, is, yeah, kind of, as, someone who's, since as you've gotten older, you've kind of gone into youth leading and kind of that kind of thing. And this is not you being an expert or anything like that, but you're someone who's got some lived experience. Um, for those that are listening that might go, oh, yeah, okay, if someone was to come up to me and open up that this is what they've been struggling with, that they've been dealing with thoughts of wanting to end their life, what what do you do?
Oh, that's such a hard question because everyone is so different. Um,
Mm,
and for me, the things that worked were praying. I
mm,
think first of all, before anything, is prayer. And like I said before, being open with God and being honest
mm,
and kind of letting God into all of your life, not just the parts that
yep.
you want him to see or the part that you may need, but actually letting God envelop your whole life. And secondly, as soon as you start feeling that way, reach out, talk to someone. I was so lucky that I had youth leaders around, I had friends around, and I had people that cared. I had that friend that told the counselor, and
as much as you didn't like it, it was probably a good
as much
thing.
as I felt like he was almost narking on me or something like that. I had people that cared for me and wanted me to get help, and I think the first point was reaching out and telling and talking. And I think that what my advice would be is, just talking to your people. If you're young, talk to your parents. I know it's hard, but do it, because they love you. If you're a bit older, if you're talk to your mates. Still talk to your parents. And
Parents like it when they talk to us, no matter how old we are.
Absolutely. And if it is getting to the point where you feel that it's really beyond what you can do, like reach out for professional help. I think that's the point where if all the other avenues don't work for you, then that's where you go.
Yeah. And if you are at that point, in the show notes, there's going to be some links to places you can reach out to help if you do need. And on our website, anxiousfaith.org, there's always that help page where you can go and find some places to reach out to if you're in Australia, if you're in New Zealand. We've got those listed. If you're in another country, you might have to do some Googling, but please don't let that stop you from reaching out for help. Joshua, thank you so much for sharing your story. This has just been an absolute privilege to kind of hear your story and hear how God has used your experience and taught you so much, but brought you back and kept you around to share that story as well. So, just hope that through whatever He has planned for you and through you sharing your story today, kind of thing, other people will be given hope that might be struggling, or at least know that, hey, this is. It's not a one-way street if you start heading down that road, but there is hope, and there is a good God who is there walking with you by the whole time. So thank you so much for sharing your story, Josh. It's been an absolute privilege to chat with you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. If it was helpful or encouraging, we'd love for you to drop a like on it and share it around. You can see way more content on our website, anxiousfaith.org, where you can listen to each episode of the podcast, find more resources, and read our blog all around mental health and faith. Be sure to also follow us on socials via the links in the description, and subscribe to our channel so you can be kept in the loop when we're dropping more content for you. Thanks so much, and God bless.